Ignition sequence starts. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Hey everybody, this is the Digital Asset Investor, and tonight my wife is away from home, and that means that it's just me and the boys. And what that also means is that we don't clean up anything around the house. We don't load the dishes in the dishwasher, we don't make the beds, we don't do anything because we cannot get in trouble just tonight. Now, before she gets back tomorrow, I will make sure that it is spick and span around here. But in the meantime, we're going to do whatever we want to do. Don't tell her. In fact, by the way, if I've never told you, I think I have told you this on this channel, my wife does not ever listen to any of my shows on digital assets. It's kind of, I would compare it to, have you ever known, like when you had a kid or something and you go to watch them in a play or something, and you're sitting in your seat and you're kind of gripping the seat, just hoping that your kid doesn't screw up. But it's almost painful for you to watch just because you're hoping that they don't mess up. Well, it's that same kind of thing for my wife. She almost can't stand to watch my shows because she feels the pressure of all the thousands of people that are listening, I think. And I don't think she likes to feel that. Well, first, I wanted to show you this. This is from Binance. Have a favorite influencer you'd love to get recognition from the wider crypto community in the first ever Binance Influencer Awards. We're trying to do just that. Award nominations are live now until June 30th, so 5 more days. You can nominate there. I'm not telling you to nominate me. I just wanted to make you aware of the influencer awards. It might be something interesting to go look at. I think it's Binance's like 3-year anniversary. Isn't it amazing what one guy can accomplish? I mean, it's not just one guy accomplishing it, but one guy, one idea, and within 3 years, he's one of the largest crypto exchanges in the world, and he's a billionaire. Pretty amazing. Okay, so I played you this clip in the last video from Chris Larson yesterday, and then I wanted to expound on that a little bit. I'll show you.
I think that Bitcoin kind of went into, hey, we're about store, remember all that payment stuff we talked about? Well, we're about store value, right? Yeah, and that's kind of largely wealthy people, right? I mean, it's kind of cool, and it's kind of digital.
Right, he said that's kind of largely wealthy people. Well, I told you this morning that the type of people that he's talking about here is Mike Novogratz. Mike Novogratz is one of the early investors in Ripple. I'm going to show you Mike Novogratz and another early investor in Ripple, the guy from Pantera Capital. I'm drawing a blank on his name, but what I think Chris Larson is talking about here is these guys. Now, both of them were on a show with Jeremy Allaire. Jeremy Allaire has a show called The Money Movement, and he's not getting a whole lot of views on The Money Movement, but he does this show. Now, remember, Jeremy Allaire is with Circle. Circle's backed by Goldman Sachs, right? Okay, so these two guys are two of the early investors in Ripple who now, but they also, I think what Chris Larson was getting at is some of these guys were so early in Bitcoin and they went all in on this whole idea of Bitcoin that they're in so deep now that they don't want to back out of it. And so they act like Mike Novogratz acts like he doesn't understand XRP and all that. And it's because, and I've said this a lot on this channel, I believe it's because these guys are so heavy into Bitcoin that they see Bitcoin as their first lick when the average investors come in. But none of that means that these guys are not smart guys. It just means that maybe they're not being completely upfront about what they truly know. But there's a couple of interesting clips here from these guys that I wanted to play for you about the market and where they see it going. Because remember, he's a billionaire, and I think the Pantera guy's a billionaire too. They do know what's going on behind the scenes. And so listen to this is what Mike Novogratz says about what he thinks is going to happen in the market here shortly.
And I think you're going to see that wildly accelerate. We certainly agree, and we're going to be talking about that a lot on the money movement. Obviously, I can't leave this interview, Mike, without a price prediction. Price of Bitcoin end of 2020, price of Bitcoin a year from now.
Yeah, I think something really significant is happening. We always talk about on-ramps into Bitcoin and who are the new buyers. Well, I tell you, macro hedge funds are now buying Bitcoin as a macro investment. I just read Paul Tudor Jones's investment letter for this month, and Bitcoin's all over it. And Bitcoin has a hedge inflation hedge. So that's kind of the first major hedge fund from a legend in the hedge fund industry, not buying it PA, but buying it in the fund. Yeah. That's a significant shift. And so we're seeing that in our business, more and more people coming in. There are more and more rails going on. So I think Bitcoin 20,000 at the end of the year. I think we'll probably pause a little. You're going to have the happening, and you'll probably have a buy the rumor, sell the fact for a few days, and you take right back off. I think 14,000 first target, 20,000 end of the year. But I think we're starting a 4 to 5 year bull market in this. Yeah. The last
pretty dramatic. The macro themes here, as we're talking about.
I thought that was quite interesting right there, that's what he sees. So, and I think that's what I believe too. I believe we've been through a long bear market, but I believe that in return, we're going to get a long bull market. Who knows how many years, but 3 to 5 years, I think he said 4 to 5 years. That sounds pretty about what I think. Okay. And then here's the guy. Let me see if I can make sure. Dan Moorhead's his name. I was drawing a blank a minute ago. And he had a pretty interesting clip here too.
Full reserve digital currency, and of course, stable coins such as USDC, as you know, these are by definition fully reserved systems of money. What do you think? Is this the future of the banking system?
I think it is, and again, if you look around the world, not just myopically on the United States, the U.S. dollar is one of the least bad paper currencies. It's only lost 90% of its purchasing power since 1950, but most people live in countries where all the purchasing power has been wiped out. And it's for two reasons. One is there's excessive risk taking in the banking sector, like we saw in 2008-9, and then they just print more and more of it. And now we even have an official term, quantitative easing. They're actually advertising the fact they're trying to increase the quantity of paper money. A great example would be the British pound sterling, right? It used to be exchangeable for a pound of sterling silver, and they've printed so many of these pieces of paper, it takes 184 paper pieces of pound sterling to buy 1 pound of sterling silver. So if you keep debasing the currency like that, people are going to look for alternatives. And before Bitcoin, there really wasn't an alternative. Gold obviously has been working for millennia, but there wasn't kind of a modern version of that. And now with all these different stable coins like USDC and Bitcoin, you can store your wealth, move your wealth in something that's not being eased. And actually on Monday, we had a quantitative tightening. The amount of Bitcoins issued to the market was cut by 50%, which is the opposite of the way paper money is going. And it's always, there's no leverage in it. There's no default risk or whatever. Right. If you buy a Bitcoin, you hold it for, right. Yeah, there's no reserve. You can hold it for 20 years and it's still be exactly the same percentage of the total outstanding that you started with. So I think people will shift to those. And you've seen it in USDC, 75% growth in the last 6 weeks. A couple of years from now, that could be thousands of percent growth, right?
Yeah, it's incredible. Dan.
Okay, just wanted to show you those two clips. Now back to Chris Larson. This is another clip that was posted by this Chainsaw Jackson that I don't think I showed. It was part of the interview. Listen to this.
But the U.S. government also needs to get a lot more involved in blockchain. We're slow to the game. China is so far ahead of us. They just announced they're going to spend $1.4 trillion on technology. Payments and blockchain, clearly part of that strategy. You could even argue the move to control Hong Kong more closely gives them an advantage in controlling 2 of the global financial centers. U.S. only has 1, right? So the U.S. has got to change its view that goes from 17 and 18, which was all about these horrible ICOs, initial coin offerings, which were terrible, had to be shut down. They effectively shut them down. We won that war. Now we got to switch to, okay, how do we compete with China? How do we keep up? And, till now, frankly, U.S. regulators have actually helped China by officially giving clarity to the two protocols effectively controlled by Chinese miners, Bitcoin and Ethereum. That's a mistake.
Anyway, that was a good clip. Now, I also saw, this is an older clip. I saw this going around today from Real XRP Boy. Wanted to play this. This is an interesting, there's a lot of new people listening, and this is a good clip if you've never seen this.
Very confident about.
XRP is having a summer slump. Do you expect a rebound in the fall?
You know what, I think what's really important is that any digital asset to be valuable has to be serving an actual use case. It can't just be speculation. Obviously, a lot of the market today is really speculative. But we think over the long run, it's going to be that combination of deep liquidity, market makers, institutional bets being made. But very importantly, it has to have a use case. We think the use case for the XRP ledger and XRP, the digital asset, is really around initially reducing the cost of liquidity for cross-border payments. Long term, though, we think it's a key winner in this race to be another digital asset for the world for all kinds of use cases. So that's the way you see it. It's a long-term play, has to have value, can't just be a store of value for store of value's sake, has to actually have a use case, and that's how we see this evolving. Very confident.
So he's been making that same point from day one, and that's part of the reason I've always been on the side of XRP, is because that's the whole point, is to have a use or nothing. Now this is some funny stuff. The XRP Productions, if you don't follow XRP Productions, definitely do. But XRP Productions has put out yet another funny article, and today I am the butt of the joke, and I'm happy to be the butt of the joke. I've been making fun of myself my whole life, and I will continue to do so. Hashtag, yeah, he kind of choked with that one. And what he did is he wrote an article, and it was, again, this is a parody site, but this was a good one. Coil, he writes on Coil. Go give him a follow. He says, DAI, who is me, lands huge Brad Garlinghouse interview, too starstruck to ask any questions, tragically wasting a golden opportunity that he'd been diligently working toward for years. Popular XRP YouTube personality, the digital asset investor, interviewed Ripple CEO Brad Garlinghouse Wednesday, but was too starstruck to be able to ask any questions. Mr. Brad Garlinghouse, Mr. Bradlinghouse, Mr. Garlinghouse, said DAI with a classic deer in the headlights look on his face as the interview began. I'm such a big fan of yours and XRP. XRP. Well, this is my favorite part where he screenshot the perfect idiot shot of me from the Greg Kidd interview I did. And it says, mega popular YouTuber, the digital asset investor, beginning to hyperventilate 30 seconds into his interview with Ripple CEO Brad Garlinghouse. The XRP advocate was far too overcome by star sickness to even ask a single question. Well, I love the piece, but I will say this: as long as you threw it out there, XRP, the Standard Productions, I will challenge Brad Garlinghouse to come on and do an interview any day of the week, anytime. I'll do it at nighttime. I'll do it in the morning. I'll do it at lunchtime, whatever. I'll even do it at lunchtime Pacific time, which is his time. Whatever you want to do, you can come on anytime, and I promise I will not lock up in the interview. Part of the reason I know I will not lock up is because I've met Brad Garlinghouse, and Brad Garlinghouse is how would I say it? He's an everyman. He's one of those guys. He's the perfect guy to be a CEO. He's the face of the company, but he's a good guy with a good personality, and he's a good-natured guy. When I met him, there was no fakery from this guy. He was a genuine guy, and he has to know coming on my channel would be a good thing. But at the same time, I understand that the people from Ripple are focused probably on an IPO this year or next year, and they have their own priorities. And so I'm not judging him on whether or not he's allowed to come on here. But if he ever did want to come on here, I will not lock up, and it will be a fun conversation. I wanted to show you guys this. Many of you might be familiar with this. They have a YouTube channel. It's called Real Vision. They got a lot of good content on their channel. Well, they're having this thing called the Crypto Gathering, a virtual experience like no other, and they're having a lot of interesting speakers. Now, I've already complained to them that they didn't need to call it the Crypto Gathering. They need to call it the Bitcoin Gathering, because they filled this thing with Bitcoin Maximalists, and there's not anybody that I saw from Ripple on here. This guy is a major Bitcoin maxi. Mark Yusko is. Mike Novogratz is. CZ Binance, I think, kind of is. Not much. But then you got Pompliano is. I mean, you can go down the list here. And then there's Dan Moorhead. I just showed you those two guys, and they're obviously real into Bitcoin. The closest thing to an XRP, a pro XRP person, is Catherine Coley, the CEO of Binance.us. Rest of these jokers are pretty much, now this guy, Santiago Velez, I know he's an XRP guy. He's in the XRP community. I see his tweets and stuff every now and then. And he's a very smart guy. But there's not anybody that's really a representative from Ripple or anything on here. And maybe they don't want to be on this kind of thing, but this thing reeks of a Bitcoin maxi party. And so anyway, okay, now this is the coolest thing of the day right here. I got it from Heo Seiko Carmona, who is a very good guy. Uphold, you can now buy a fraction of Apple, Tesla, Walmart, and 47 other U.S. stocks with as little as $1. Trade between equities, cryptocurrencies, and metals, all in one account. Now, for those of you that don't know, this is one of those, I believe this is one of the Greg Kidd funded companies. I believe his venture capital is one of the backers of Uphold. And Uphold, I'm going to try my best to see if I can get, I believe I can do it pretty easily, the CEO of Uphold on the show. So Uphold, if you're hearing this, I'll do an interview with the CEO, and I might have some other channels to do that, as other channels, people I could talk to help make that happen. But new U.S. equity trading, invest as little as $1 in household names. I want to show you some of these household names. Let me make sure it's not showing any of my stuff here. I'm going to show you some of the household names. Available equities. Choose from 50 household names. Tesla, Roku, Netflix, Facebook, Berkshire Hathaway Home Service. I think that's their real estate company. Amazon, Johnson & Johnson. I'm just calling out the ones I recognize. MasterCard, Procter & Gamble, Apple, Intel, Home Depot, Google, Disney, Cisco, NBC, Citi, Visa, what else? Bank of America. So this is big time. Now, I don't know what, I recognize a few of these. QQQ is an ETF that invests, it's like a NASDAQ index fund, as I recall. SPY is an S&P index fund. I recognize a couple of these because I've invested in them in the past. But this is big, folks. This is the world we're moving into. This is a big, big deal right here. And I want to talk to this guy. I want to talk to the CEO of Uphold. I'll get him on here. Don't worry, folks. I will get him. This is exciting right here. Okay. Now that today on PayID had a PayID, which is the consortium that Ripple has just put together with these PayID extensions. Anyway, they did a web conference today, and Brad Garlinghouse was in it. And I haven't seen a clip of him yet, but here's a clip where they talk about rolling out the Interledger protocol. And then I'm going to show you something I've shown you before. Watch.
Expand that in a really large number of interesting ways. So we've thought of several of these. I'm sure there are many, many more that are possible here. But some of the examples here that we'll be touching on today are things like checkout, using PayID in more complex ways than just a push payment. Things like polls, subscriptions, recurring payments, verifiable PayID, which are some security enhancements that I touched on. Compliance and travel rule, a very important issue facing the space today in crypto, and obviously is really fundamental to payments generally. Ties into digital identity, forwarding and aliasing, your standard web stack things, and then roll out of more complex protocols, things like Interledger, another thing that we work on.
So here it is right here if you didn't see it. Interledger protocol rollout. Do you mean an interledger protocol rollout similar to the Everest document that Love for Crypto found a while back? Ripple becomes the standard for international money transfers between banks. ILP becomes the standard protocol for connecting banks' cash ledgers as a part of Ripple software. This is supposed to happen by 2020. Wait, that's the year we're in. And then it's also supposed to look like this, just as a little reminder. Interledger protocol, interledger protocol, interledger protocol, interledger protocol, interledger protocol. I'm the digital asset investor. I'm not an investment advisor. This is for entertainment purposes only. Please subscribe and hit the like button and tell your friends and family that the Interledger protocol is being rolled out by PayID this year. Thanks for listening.